For today's adventure, I'm off to visit the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, which is located in the northwestern side of the Sierra National Forest. Hetch Hetchy is renowned for its natural beauty, and as I drove there, it became evident to me very quickly that it's not just a bunch of hearsay. The drive to get there was like traveling through a picturesque calendar where every turn was as stunning as the last. I knew I was in for a treat. Plus, if you love local history, you'll pass through a few small historic towns that were founded back in the 1850s during the California Gold Rush that are still in operation today, which I hope to come back and visit very soon. My goal today is to just enjoy the beautiful countryside, but I knew the highlight was going to be getting up close to Wapama Falls. I get my first glance at it as it greets me from a distance. The Hetch Hetchy Reservoir is formed by the O'Shaughnessy Dam, which was completed in 1923 to serve as the water supply for the city of San Francisco. But the history of this valley goes back a long ways. Native Americans from the Paiute and Miwok tribes inhabited this valley dating back to 6,000 years ago. The word Hetch Hetchy is a Miwok word that is thought to mean edible grasses, likely named for the different types of plants that grew in this valley that they relied on as food sources, like this purplehead. As a matter of fact, most things in this valley have retained their original Native American names, like Wapama Falls, Kolana Rock, and Tuiulala Falls. The hike to Wapama Falls begins when you cross the O'Shaughnessy Dam through this tunnel that was carved out of the solid granite mountain during the construction of the dam. The purpose of this tunnel was to transport construction materials, but nowadays it serves as a gateway for hundreds of miles of hiking trails for adventurous backpackers. You could hike across the Sierras from here. You could even hike to Lake Tahoe if you wanted. Some think of it as a symbolic light at the end of the tunnel for the beauty that awaits. Hetch Hetchy is part of the Yosemite National Park, and because of that, the decision to build a dam here was incredibly controversial and a battle that still rages on today, believe it or not, nearly 100 years after its completion. The calling for the preservation of these valleys began nearly as soon as settlers started flooding the areas in the mid-1800s, and it became a highly politicized issue. One of the first proponents for preservation was a man by the name of Galen Clark, who lived in the nearby town of Wawona. He fell in love with the area and began writing letters to Congress to preserve Yosemite. Eventually, he received the support of U.S. senators, and by 1864, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Yosemite Grant, which essentially was the birth of the state park system. This set a precedent that would eventually lead to the creation of the National Park System and Park Service. Like most things President Lincoln did, this was considered an outrage, and this battle went all the way up to the Supreme Court, who thankfully ruled in favor of the grant, which allowed for the removal of homesteaders and ranchers whose livestock were ravaging these areas and destroying the ecosystems. Unfortunately, the Yosemite Grant designation did not extend to the Hetch Hetchy Valley, and John Muir continued the battle. In 1890, the Hetch Hetchy Valley was finally included in the Yosemite State Park, but disputes over state and private properties continued until Muir persuaded President Theodore Roosevelt in the early 1900s to reclaim these valleys as federal lands for preservation till the end of time. All things were great for a little while, but the victory was relatively short-lived. The city of San Francisco had unsuccessfully been trying to claim water rights in these areas and pushing for damming this region for decades. Those hopes all but seemed to have withered away when the federal government reclaimed these lands, and it would now take an act of Congress for any such thing to happen, but that is precisely what was about to occur. In 1906, a historic earthquake and fire devastated the city of San Francisco. It's estimated that as much as 80% of the city was destroyed and as many as 3,000 lives were lost. This tragic event garnered a lot of support and momentum for those who had been in favor of placing a dam here, enough so that a bill called the Raker Act of 1913 was signed into law by Congress, allowing for the construction of the dam. This dealt a huge blow to environmentalists and nature lovers alike. One of the biggest issues that frustrated conservationists and opponents of the dam was not so much the construction of a reservoir, but where to place it. You see, San Francisco is roughly 167 miles away from here. There were many other proposed areas outside of the national park, so with so much space from here to there, it's difficult to argue there weren't other suitable locations. But the city was intent on placing it here, and the manner in which it was steamrolled through Congress with very little debate rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Further exacerbating the skeptics were the private interest groups who stood to gain from this massive project. John Muir never lived to see the completion of the dam, but he was highly distressed over the decision to dam the valley. He spent his last years fighting to overturn the decision, and many say the stress of it led him to his grave. By then, Muir was a frail 76-year-old man. He died on Christmas Eve in 1914. I've finally reached the base of Wapama Falls. I can already feel the sheer power of the roaring waterfall vibrate through the rock, but it's a positive energy that reinvigorates you. I step on the edge of this cliffside for a better view and triumph in the waterfall's glory. Whether you're a religious or spiritual person, you can't help being thankful for this moment. I reflect on one of my favorite quotes: "These are the days that must happen to you." Walt Whitman. I'm gonna give you all a break here and just let you enjoy this for a bit. You could easily spend hours in this area just taking in the day, reading a book, meditating, or whatever you enjoy. As you saw, you will get wet when on the bridge, but it's a fun, playful feeling which reminded me of being a kid playing and running water sprinklers. With my goal for the day accomplished, I start heading back. Like the Yosemite Valley, the Hetch Hetchy Valley was formed in the exact same way. This entire valley was carved out by giant glaciers over multiple ice ages, which is what gives them their majestic cliff sides. Because this region is made up mostly of granite rock, this helps maintain this watershed exceptionally pristine. The water does not collect a whole lot of sediments or soluble toxins and can be delivered to its customers with no filtration needed and very minimal treatment. San Francisco has the cleanest water in the country, which sadly is a rare thing in modern society. The hike to Wapama Falls is about 2.5 miles, so round trip, you'll do a total of 5 miles. The trail is pretty level most of the way, with the occasional incline. It's not a bad idea to bring an extra set of clothes or whatever other sundries you prefer for your hike, but leave your bathing suits at home. Body contact is not permitted in the Hetch Hetchy reservoir.
Hey everyone, that's going to be it for today's adventure. Hetch Hetchy is a wonderful place, and I gotta say, it's probably one of the most scenic places I've been to date. It's also a great place to bring children, from kindergarten all the way up to middle-aged ones like myself. I saw a lot of kids out there and they looked like they were having a blast. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and as usual, thank you for coming along. Till next time, bye-bye.